Hey everyone, today I interview Danielle Brooks. She is the owner of the Honey Truck. Danielle is a past photographer turned beekeeper, and she has an amazing story to share with you guys. Don't let it fool you just because you're not in the beekeeping business. It doesn't mean that this episode doesn't have great lessons for you. Danielle is a badass CEO, and it's so great to listen to her story and see how she grew into her business as a CEO and what her mindset looks like, what her strategies look like, and how smart she was as she was growing the Honey Truck Company. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, lots of amazing tips for you on how to grow your business and how to be smart and really take into that role of a CEO. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Accidental CEO podcast, where we bridge the gap between the creativity you love and the CEO mindset you need. I'm your host, Nada Salvatore, wedding photographer and business educator. Find full show notes and resources at accidentalceopod.com. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Accidental CEO podcast. I am your host, Nada Salvatore, and today I have the amazing Danielle Brooks with me. She is the owner of the Honey Truck, and we're going to talk about just her journey from where she was before to becoming a beekeeper and owning this amazing truck that she is very proud of. And I've seen all around St. Augustine here in Florida, and I can't wait for her to share more of what she does with you guys. So welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're kind of neighbors here in Florida. We are not too far from each other. And I've seen Danielle's truck in a couple of events, and I love the idea. So I'm excited to have her as a guest. I wanted you to just tell them a little bit, Danielle, about just where you were before the truck. What was your life like? What was your job like? And then how did you become the owner of the Honey Truck?
Absolutely. I think it's so crazy that I feel like I would have met you through Rising Tide Society, but then it turns out that we live in the exact same town and it's just a tiny, tiny world. But originally, I was not a beekeeper. I graduated from Flagler College in 2009. I got my degree in journalism and wanted to be a newscaster. I love telling people stories. And I started as an associate producer, but I hated my life. I hated that job and started working back at my alma mater at Flagler doing press releases. But it was contract work and the work ran out. And so my boss came to me and said, "Hey, if you know how to use a camera, we have some more work. We have another project that we would like for you to work on." And I did not know how to use a camera, but I lied and said that I did so that I could keep my job. And I taught myself photography. And since it was 30 hours a week, I started taking on clients outside of that job and started doing family photo sessions, high school seniors. Families were kind of my bread and butter. I love running around with little kids and mom and dad. And so I had a lot of fun in doing that. But, over time, I just kind of started losing that creative niche. And I was like, what would be really fun is to get a beehive. And so I found somebody who actually owned bees, and they let me come and check out their beehive before I brought home thousands of stinging insects. And I realized that I could do it and be inside a beehive and not freak out about it. And so I brought home some bees, and you're either making more bees or you're making honey. So at a certain point, I kind of ran out of space on my property. I contacted a friend who lives over on Anastasia Island and said, "Hey, can I put a beehive on your property?" And they said, "Sure thing." And I moved bees over there. And when we harvested the honeys, they were different colors, which is very surprising. St. Augustine is a small little town, and just, within 5-mile radiuses of each other, the honeys were visually different. I started researching why that would be. And it has to do with the plant makeup in an area. So, two things. A sunflower that grows on the island is going to have sand in the soil. It's going to have salt in the air, and it's going to produce a different tasting nectar than a sunflower that grows inland that doesn't have those resources. Also, the plants that are around the hive within that 3-mile radius are completely different than a different 3-mile radius. So on the island, I would say that there's a lot of citrus, there's a lot of wildflowers. and inland, there's a lot more gallberry, there's a lot more saw palmetto, so it's going to create a darker tasting honey. And immediately I just knew that this was a marketable idea. And I just kind of started running with it. And at some point, that's the point that everybody's like, which do I pick? Do I want to jump full time into something else? Do I want to stay where I'm at? Is this a hobby? So yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna make you back up a little bit there because that's an amazing story. And you transitioned to, from working in journalism and taking some pictures into something completely different. And when you said, "Oh, I was thinking, what could I do?" and you're like, "Oh, I can work in a beehive." That is not the first thing that comes to mind to most people. So tell us a little bit more about where that passion or interest came from. Was that a part of your life? Did you know somebody that had it or did it? So how did that even come into your radar?
No, it truly was, I feel, an idea that was just placed in my heart to do. I think homesteading was probably popular at the time, and I've always been the person to pick the weird, off the beaten path thing. And, it wasn't enough for me to grow tomatoes and cucumbers in my yard. I was like, let's harvest our own honey. And so at that point, it was not at all a business. It wasn't even something that I wanted to do as a business until I harvested the honeys and started selling it, at local farmers markets. And I had a friend at the time who needed some photography work. She was a graphic designer and went to school professionally for it. And I went to her and said, hey, can you create a brand? Not a logo. Can you create a brand for this business? And I'll do, as many photo sessions as you want. Like, I know that your work is so valuable and I know that you value my work as well. And so let's trade these things. And so that was kind of how the identity of Honey Truck was born.
Were you still holding a job while you working on trying to figure it out if that was something you wanted to do?
Yes, I advocate so heavily for branding. And I said it earlier, not a logo, a brand. People invest in brands they understand and care about, not logos. So when you come to the Honey Truck, you meet me. Hey, I'm Danielle. I'm a beekeeper, and these are honeys that come from my hives. Just giving people an overall feeling when they come to the truck is what they're buying. They're buying you. They're not buying a logo. Very early on, I understood that even though I wasn't selling a ton of honey, I wanted to have a brand that people trusted and cared about just as much as I did. And to be honest, that wasn't really like I had Danielle Brooks photography and I had a logo, I would say, for that, but it wasn't really a brand like the Honey Truck is. Like at the end of the day, no one really cares about Danielle Brooks photography. But if you walk around St. Augustine and say, have you heard of the Honey Truck? Most people have. And so if you are out there I would encourage you to create branding.
It's definitely important to differentiate yourself, and a lot of that is done by having a strong brand for sure. Tell us a little bit about the transition of just having that passion for beekeeping into making it a viable business. What were some of the challenges that you faced into making that shift?
Countless challenges at every turn. Do not start a business and assume that it's going to be walking through a field of daisies, because it is not. I listen to a lot of Casey Musgraves, and one of my favorite lines is out of her debut album. And she says, if you want to bottle lightning, you're going to have to stand in the rain. And I feel like that's what I'm doing, is I am standing in pouring down rain and I'm just holding up a bottle trying to catch lightning. And it's a process that not a lot of people get to see because it's behind closed doors. And, like the transition to being full time with Honey Truck versus the photography, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my husband in all of this, because when I was doing photography full time, he wanted to start his own law firm. He had passed the bar exam and didn't really want to work for somebody else. And that's a much harder path than just signing on to somebody who can give you work and you work for 80 hours a week and you make 160 grand. Like, he really wanted to invest in his clients. He wanted to build a book of business. And so that again was the harder, longer path to travel. And so while I was doing photography full time, I was supporting us financially. And I enjoyed doing that. It was a great, balance. It worked for us. And then as he started growing his business, we truly kind of became dual income at that point. That was when I started thinking like, hey, I would like to step out of photography. Like I have built Honey Truck now to a level where I want to invest full time in this. And that's a risk because inherently what we're saying is we're going to live now just on your income. Is that possible? Like a lot of times we hear these stories of entrepreneurs and just going into business. Like, I don't have seed money. I don't have investors. I don't have a loan from a bank. Like, this is our personal money. And so there's a lot of risk associated with that. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody can do that. A lot of people require two full-time working people to be able to make it. And starting a side hustle is hard.
Yeah, thank goodness for supportive partners. I say that all the time. It's good when you can kind of take turns taking care of your family so you can both pursue your dreams and support each other. That's very special that you had that. Very cool. So tell us a little bit about the business model of the honey truck and how selling honey from a vintage truck at events and pop-ups really contribute to the overall success of the brand.
Yeah, so I was originally going to call it the Nectar Company, spelled phonetically with a K and a T, and as we were like kind of getting things up and running, the truck itself actually didn't work. We bought it and then promptly broke it because we didn't know how to drive a manual, and there was a lot of issues trying to get it up and running. And so while my husband was working on it, I would say things like, "Oh, I need to go throw this in the honey truck," or, "When do you think you're going to have the honey truck?" Whatever, whatever. And so it just became this, I need to call this business the honey truck. So when I first got the truck, like I immediately knew that I didn't want a brick and mortar, which is ironic because I'm sitting in a brick and mortar now. But honey is seasonal. You harvest once a year, and I didn't want to be tied to paying rent year round. That was important financially at the time. And so having the truck allowed us to be able to do that. I wasn't paying rent for a space. I could store it at my house. And I was just selling it at farmers markets out, honey that came from my hives. And I think honestly, just the narrative and how unique the truck is to our branding kind of created a movement that I didn't understand at the time. And there just became so much more demand. I would sell out very quickly. And if anybody is in business for themselves, they say, okay, well, how do I make more money doing this? And so, I started partnering with other beekeepers who didn't want to sit at farmers markets. They loved beekeeping, but honey is a byproduct of having bees. And so they would sell it to me, and I would bottle it, package it, and sell it under our brand. And now that has kind of grown so big, I started off doing hyper local honeys. So beehives, we did a host to hive program where I went to people's houses and had beehives on their property, and I would label it according to where the hive was. Over time, I started seeing a trend at the farmers market that a lot of people who came through were not from St. Augustine. I would say it was about 50-50, but a huge portion of the market was tourists coming into town. And they didn't care that honey came from State Road 16 or the island. What they wanted was something that said St. Augustine honey, which then allowed me to branch out to partner with more beekeepers to be able to say, like, hey, this honey was bottled within St. Johns County. This is our St. Augustine honey. It's not a hyper local honey. It is a little different. It comes, from wherever in St. Johns County. It took off. And so I had somebody, Brittany Vidal with the Kookaburra, came to me and said, hey, we want to wholesale your honey in Kookaburra. And I kind of thought it was a joke at first. I was like, I'm just a podunk beekeeper. Like, I don't know anything about selling it in a
Yeah,
coffee
yeah.
shop. But I started researching it and found out that I needed to be in a commercial kitchen in order to do that. And Nils and Bailey Rowland with Creme de la Coco here in town were extremely gracious. And they allowed me to come in when they were closed to bottle my honey in their space. And that was a wonderful jumpstart for my business. I've been truly like, Honey Truck is a community brand, and people have invested in my company, and I'm very passionate about, investing back in them. And so once I started wholesaling to Kookaburra, the world is your oyster. You can really sell to anyone, anywhere. And again, I started noticing that a lot of people didn't really care that my honey came from St. Augustine. They wanted something that said Florida honey, which opens up even more avenues to be able to scale. And now we're selling in places like Home Goods. So if you're listening and you're like, where do I find a jar of Honey Truck honey? Go into your local Home Goods and grab a jar. I'm super excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and we just partnered also with the National Park Service, and we're doing co-branded honeys with them. And we just rolled out at the Castillo de San Marcos, so you can get a cute little jar that you can only get at the fort.
That is so amazing. So that really talks to the ability to scale your business and be open to new opportunities, which again, we can use in all of our businesses out there. Even if you're not a beekeeper, this is the kind of concept of being open to new ideas, being on the lookout to how can I expand my services and being ready to take that step whenever the opportunity comes around. Because I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision to say, "Hey, I'm gonna have to switch to an industrial kind of commercial kitchen. That's money that goes into that. Am I ready to take that step? Is it gonna be more opportunities for wholesale once I take that step?" I'm sure all of that was a difficult, process for you to work through, but it looks like you made all the right decisions.
It's easy to talk about now, but even when I was doing photography full time, one of the avenues that I started looking into, like weddings is kind of the gold rush, right? You can charge a lot of money because you're there for a lot of hours. It is a time consuming, it is expensive but worth it investment. And ultimately, I did not want to do weddings. And so I could either take on 5 family photo sessions or I could take on a wedding. And so I looked at doing sports photography and going around to local gymnastic places, baseballs, daycare facilities to be able to work with the clients that I want to work with and to be able to have that scale and that volume and to just kind of readjust like, hey, I love families. Why can't I photograph, girls gymnastic stuff? It's the same thing. All it takes is an additional backdrop and maybe another light. And now suddenly I can do all sorts of different things.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you have that entrepreneur spirit and the CEO mindset to really look for opportunities. That's amazing. How do you balance the education aspect of your mission with that commercial side of selling honey? How did both of them kind of contribute to the growth of your business?
It is the driving force of Honey Truck, to be honest. I read a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why, and he very much advocated for finding out why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, nobody else can jump on board with you. And so I'm passionate about talking about bees, about honey, where honey comes from, how honey is adulterated in our market, how it's important to work with reputable suppliers, be aware of your food chain and what's going into your body. And I love talking about that. I talk about it in schools. I talk about it. You at the University of Florida has a bee college every year, and I speak there. And then even talking on podcasts with people like yourself and educating. That's all I do. Education is the vehicle, and the product that helps fund that vehicle is that I sell jars of honey. But educating people is my passion, and that's what I love doing.
That's amazing. My little one is obsessed with bees. She loves bees, but she's scared of them, but she loves them at the same time. So it's very interesting to watch her. Whenever we get close to it, she's so interested in it, and she wants to learn, and she loves bees, and but she's at the same time terribly scared of it. So it's just that passion.
A healthy
Yeah.
fear and respect. That's a good thing.
Yeah, so I love that you go around and educate people and really, I feel like once we learn more about things, we are more interested in them and more likely to even consume it, once you have better information about what you're doing. So that's very cool that you do that. And that again can be translated into a lot of different businesses. Are you going around and educating clients and potential clients on what you do and why you do what you do? And that becomes part of your brand and kind of defining your mission and why did you created this business to begin with.
Yeah, and somebody comes to the honey truck and they say, "Well, why are these honeys different colors?" That's an opportunity to educate them. They say, "Oh, I've had this honey and it went bad in my cupboard." Well, actually, that's a process called crystallization, and that's how you know that your honey is not filtered. And so just educating and talking to people about these things, it can happen anywhere really. I don't have to have a classroom to be able to talk about those sorts of things.
So here's a random bee honey question for you. Is it true that if you have allergies and you consume local honey, it can help you with allergies?
I have a lot of clients who say that it helps. A lot of people do come to get honey for that, and they are my biggest advocates for that sort of thing.
Does that have to be consumed in a specific way or as long as they're
They say they just take it on a spoon. They just eat it. You can drizzle it over some granola or smoothies. You put it over yogurt.
all right. I love that. We were just talking before we hit record how I'm struggling with my allergies now. Since I've moved here, it's been not so much fun this time of the year because I'm outside a lot shooting weddings and, doing my sessions, and it just destroys me. So I might be calling you for some honey soon. Today's episode is sponsored by the Delegation Secrets How to Let Go and Scale Your Business course. Are you ready to scale your business without burnout? As an entrepreneur, you're juggling everything. Client work, marketing, admin, finances is exhausting. You build your business from the ground up, but it's time to ask yourself, how long can I keep doing it all on my own? What if you could free up time for higher level activities that truly make the needle move in your business? What if you could scale without sacrificing your sanity? It all starts with one word: delegation. The Delegation Secrets course comes with 6 different modules, and you learn everything from the mindset of delegation to identifying tasks you should delegate, build a trustworthy team, effective communication for seamless delegation, tools and processes for efficient outsourcing, and measuring success and scaling further. Let's break free together. You can find more information on accidentalceo.co/delegate-course. Now back to the episode. What were some of the logistical and kind of more business challenges of scaling up from one beehive to multiple hives across St. Augustine, and how did you kind of address that?
So that's been an ebb and flow. I would say that there's 2 different types of scaling. There is scaling with the beehives and there's scaling with manufacturing equipment. And so I, at the very beginning, was only doing hyperlocal honey, and those were 100% my beehives, my honey. And as I started growing, I couldn't maintain all of the beehives in a way that was sustainable for them. And also during this time, like I had started Honey Truck and had been doing it for about 3 years. And then I got pregnant and COVID hit. And so a lot of that factored into where I'm at now, because I realized very quickly I can't be both a phenomenal beekeeper and a phenomenal honey saleswoman. And so I love selling honey. I'm mediocre at beekeeping. I enjoy doing it. I think that it's pivotal to my brand to be involved. And so I will always have beehives, but I will not have them at this mass scale where, I work with honey farmers who have thousands of beehives, and that's all they do all day, every day. They're in their beehives and they're working and they're moving them. They're doing pollination services. And I think that that's lovely and great. I enjoy doing it, as much as I can. And so it's not sustainable for me to do all of the maintenance of beehives and be, a honey saleswoman and being a part-time stay-at-home mom. I'm at home with my kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and those are home days. And I can only be at Honey Truck Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And if my kid gets sick or they don't have a school, my kids don't have school this Friday, so I'm at home with them on Fridays. And so it's not sustainable for me to have mass scale beehives, which is okay for right now. It's a season. And I do maintain still our hyper local hives, which I think is very important to me and our mission. And then the other side of scaling is the manufacturing equipment. So the way that you process honey is you can extract it with a radial extractor. It spins around, and the honey comes out of a honey gate, and you put it in a 5-gallon bucket or a barrel. And that honey is dirty, as I would say. Like, it sounds terrible, but there's wax, there's bee parts, there's dirt. Like, when you harvest honey, it's dirty. And so it goes through a sieve, a mesh sieve that filters those things out, but it still has the good pollen, all the good enzymes and stuff are still in that honey. And so when I was at Creme using their space, I would have a 5-gallon bucket with a spout on it. And I would sit there and lift the honey gate and close it. And I would just do that jar after jar after jar for hours on end. Eventually, I started growing so big that I was like, I'm not using my time in somebody else's space as efficiently as possible. There has to be a piece of machinery that can help buy my time. And so I found a bottler, and It is a big piece of machinery. It sits on a table, and so I would I would cart in my jars, my lids, my labels, my bottler, and I would set it all up at Creme, and I would be there for 13-hour days until I got it done. And eventually I got too big and they were growing too, and so we decided that it was mutually time that I move on and fly the nest and get my own space. And so I recently opened up a 2,000 square foot warehouse where I bottle my honey. The next slowest piece of time that I needed to buy for myself was applying labels. Hand applying labels over and over and over again takes hours. But I now have a label machine that I found on Facebook Marketplace. I was really thrifty. I was able to retool it to be able to accommodate our French square jars. And so now I can do up to 350 jars an hour. I also recently bought a capping machine because, again, sitting there for hours and just screwing caps on manually just takes so much time and energy. And so now I have a fully automated line that can be run with one person. It is easier with two, and it's great with three. That buys me time, and I'm able to run my business lean and efficient, and I'm able to produce large scale orders for larger corporate clients.
That's amazing. Again, it shows your mindset for being a CEO and really analyzing what tasks really need my time. It is my expertise better used screwing, the lids into the jars, or can I be making some sales calls for the products or creating relationships to get our products in more places? So I feel like that's a great lesson that we all can apply in our businesses, making sure that you take the time as you're growing to assess the tasks and processes that really need your expertise, your skill set, or can you be hiring somebody to do that? Can you be buying a piece of machine to do that, to free up your time to really grow your business and be that CEO that you're supposed to be? So I love that.
Yeah, and when I was doing photography, I was kind of floundering back. This was probably about 7 years ago now. I was floundering against the idea of Fiverr was, like, just coming out on the market. It was, an easy way to buy your time, right? You could pay somebody to outsource your culling, your editing, everything. And I know that that can be an efficient way. Like, is your time better spent editing your photos, or is your time better spent networking with clients and booking your next session?
How important was networking for your business, especially your involvement in some of the associations in town and the collaboration with the small scale beekeepers?
I think that they lend credibility to my business and my brand. I'm very strategic about the organizations that I'm partnered with. I would say that yes, networking in that way has helped. I've been able to enjoy being able to call back on my photography clients, right? Like, a lot of people know that I made that transition because they're families who wanted photos every year. And so a lot of them got to see that story arc of, like, oh, she's got a beehive. That's so cool. Oh, now she has a kid of her own. Oh, now she's like selling at farmers markets. And like, so like they kind of saw it coming in that regard. And so networking in that way has been pretty great, as well as, being involved at Bee College. Or we recently were selected by Southern Living as one of the best of the South brands, and we're really proud of that. We were featured on the Today Show with Jenna and Hoda, and so to be able to talk with people about that is another way to showcase our clientele that these other businesses who are larger fishes in bigger ponds stand behind us and our brand.
That's amazing. Congratulations again. That's just another,
Thank you.
test to your success and your ability to have a clear vision to follow through with your business. So you said something about being strategic with the networking that you do. Can you talk a little bit more about what are the kinds of things that you look for when you're deciding to give your time into those partnerships, in those relationships? Are specific things that you're looking for that you know are going to give back to your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that when it comes to educating, if a school comes to me or an organization that is specifically geared towards children, 100%. Like, I love doing that. I love being around kids. I love talking about bees with little ones. We get asked to do pop-ups all the time at local events, and so I know that the ideal honey truck client is going to be a mid 30s and older woman who has expendable income, who loves cooking, who would spend more money on an ingredient knowing that it is a higher quality ingredient. They also want to gift things that are luxury items. They see honey and they see the value that a teaspoon of honey is for a honeybee, and they want to give that to other people. So I'm very strategic about the events that I do, because if my target audience is not going to be like, think about a flea market, right? When you just hear flea market, you think discount, bargain, sale, and that's great. There are people who sell honey that do great at flea markets. If I put my honey truck there and I'm selling a jar of honey for $12, no one's going to buy it because my target audience is not there. But if I go to a women's event at a local church, they want to gift honey. They love giving things. It's a different clientele with a different marketable, it's a different marketable area. So that's why, like there's dozens of people who sell honey in St. Augustine, and I genuinely do not view them as competition, because none of them, in my opinion, are marketing to my specific target audience. So if you're a photographer and you're like, man, there's like so many photographers in my area, like figure out who your target audience is and be there. Like, I know what my clients are reading. I know what they're watching. I know how to market to them. I know how to be in front of them. And so I'm not going to waste my time on any other, opportunity that comes my way just because it's an opportunity. Like, there is a respectful way to say, to ask them, like, hey, have you considered who your target audience is for this event? And if it's not in line with who my target audience is, to be able to respectfully say, hey, thanks so much for thinking about us. We're not going to be able to make it to this event. Thank you again for considering us.
I love that. Again, being strategic in how you spend your time, because when you're scaling, when you're growing, your time is very valuable. Or to be honest, at any point, at any point as a business owner, your time is important. Time is money, and you want to make sure that you're spending that time in activities that are going to give you a good return of investment. Are going to put you again in line with the mission and vision that you have for your business. So thank you for sharing that with us. So you have a certification as a master beekeeper, and you're also a certified honey judge, which I love that. Multiple award winner. You have a lot of accolades. How does that impact your credibility and your customer trust, you think? Because that, again, can be translated into a lot of different businesses. And when it comes to publications, maybe for a photographer, or having your templates out there as a designer, there's many things that we can do to kind of show that expertise. How do you think that impacted your credibility overall with your clients?
It is everything, like the Honey Truck brand hinges on being open and transparent. If I don't, if I don't produce the honey that's in the jar, I know the beekeeper who did, I know the beekeeping practices that they use, and I am involved in this education system that taught me how to understand those things and how to identify good beekeeping techniques. Obviously, I use all of those. Like, I would not partner with a beekeeper who keeps bees in a way that is not in line with our mission. If we are not taking care of our honeybees and we're just trying to pump honey out of them, then the bees aren't going to be healthy for the next season. And so, they very much are a partner in the business. And if we're not caring for them, we're going to see those effects later on. And so I do think that my overall target audience appreciates the fact that I've spent and continue to spend time in continuing education. When I was doing photography full time and sort of kind of transitioning out, I was in the process of becoming a certified photographer through PPA. And I had already passed the exam that was needed and was getting together my portfolio. And ultimately, I didn't end up finishing that process because I was like, way, yeah, beekeeping, so much fun. And started, earning certifications in there too. But like, that's a marketable thing. If your business has won an award, if your business is a sponsor for something, if your business, it was featured as a best of thing or whatever in your town, highlight that on your social media, talk about that, because that tells other people that I'm not just sitting here saying, oh, I have great honey. I've got, hundreds of other people who are way bigger than me saying, you need to buy her stuff. It's delicious. I bought it for my friend and they loved it. The jar is beautiful, blah, blah, blah. Like, my clients are my biggest advertisers. And I I feel, almost prideful to say this, but I've spent $0 in advertising for Honey Truck. And I have been very fortunate enough to know who my target audience is, and they love talking about the Honey Truck. And I'm so eternally grateful anytime someone says, I had a great experience with the Honey Truck and I want you to have one too. Like that just speaks so much more to that client coming up to the Honey Truck than it does me talking about, what is in this jar.
Absolutely. Yeah. When other people are talking about you, they're definitely selling. When you're talking about you, it's a completely different story. So, definitely creating that environment that brings that experience to the client to the point where they're screaming your name anytime they can in a room full of people. It's really what's going to bring client after client after client, have that rotating referral system going. So, definitely a good way to invest your marketing time or dollars is just making sure that you're creating an amazing client experience. You don't have to go out there and be paying for Facebook ads and all kinds of different things when you're really focusing on making sure that your clients really love the product and love working with you. So what are some of the biggest challenges in running the honey truck, and how do you manage them? Just as a lessons learned, maybe that you have had throughout the years of growing this business.
I think the biggest challenge has been figuring out how to be a part-time stay-at-home mom and run a business. Those are two opposing forces that sometimes seem to like fight each other, and oftentimes it can seem like it takes forever to send one email. Like before I had childcare 3 days a week, I would take my daughter with me to Honey Truck, and it one day, I'm not kidding, it took me 3 hours to send one email. And I was just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And to be able to say to that old Danielle, like, it's okay to go home and it's okay to not work at Honey Truck today. Like, your family needs you, and that's okay. Because the work that you're producing for Honey Truck is crap because you're so distracted by everything else that's going on. Like, what's the point? And so to be able to prioritize those things, I had a friend who told me, like, it's like juggling balls, and you have to figure out which balls are glass and which ones are plastic. And so while you're juggling all of these things, you need to analyze, is this a glass ball or is it plastic, and I can let it drop for now. It doesn't mean I'm saying goodbye to it forever. It means I have more things that are a better priority for me right now, and I have to focus on those.
Yeah, I love that. I think the concept of that work life harmony, not work life balance, because I don't believe work life balance really exists.
No,
But no,
sometimes you have something else. Like sometimes Honey Truck is the priority, and I have to look at my husband and say, "I need you to watch the kids because I have to do this. I absolutely have to do this." And then there are other days where I look at Honey Truck and I say, "This is not important right now, and my children need me, and I gotta go."
yeah, being able to kind of navigate that and go back and forth and give you your all, whatever you are, I think at that time is more important than trying to balance everything and be in more places that you can be at once. So I love that. So I've been asking all my guests this question. What are maybe some failures that happened along the way? Maybe one that sticks out in your mind that became a big lesson learned for you along your journey with growing the honey truck.
Yeah, I would say the biggest failure would just be working with my machinery. No one taught me how to put honey in a bottle. No one taught me what machines to use. I bought all of my equipment used secondhand on Facebook Marketplace. And so they didn't come with even instruction manuals. And so to be able to sit there with a machine that is designed to bottle round jars because they roll so smoothly through a piece of machinery. But when you have a square, I'm sitting here with some of them. When you have a square jar, it does
Yeah.
not roll as efficiently through machinery. And so to be able to work with a machine for, I'm not kidding, I would gamble to say close to 10,000 hours, and failure after failure, saying, like, why is this? I know that I can get this machine to do what I want it to do, but nobody is there to tell you how to do it. So it's just trial and error. And ultimately, yeah, my labeler is a success. I use that thing and it is a workhorse and it's great. And people look at it on our social media and they're like, "Oh man, that must be great to have a machine that applies your labels for you." But what they don't see is that I spent 10,000 hours like crying on the floor because I was so frustrated that I couldn't get it to work. And so for me, the biggest takeaway was nothing worth doing is going to be easy. And just anticipating those things and saying, this is going to be hard, but hard and bad are not the same things. You can look at a hard situation and say, well, this is going to be real interesting, and I'm excited to see how I'm going to work through this. Or you can look at a situation and say, well, this sucks, and the world hates me, and I'm just going to grudgingly walk through this and have a negative outlook. Like, there are different things that you can do in those situations. And I think working with machines that are not designed to process my tools has been a great learning experience for that. And it's just reps, like there are days now that things pop up, it breaks, it falls apart, it stops working for whatever reason. And I go, not today. Like I've got a million things to do, not today. But, at the end of the day, I'm the only one who knows how to run the machine. So the sooner I get to working on fixing the problem, the easier it's going to be for everybody involved.
What do you think it gave you the resilience to not quit when other people probably would have just like saying, it's too hard, it's not gonna work for me?
You either have a viable business or you have an expensive hobby. Like at the end of the day, if I had just given up, what I would have had was an expensive hobby, and I think there's a difference in investing and working through things and challenges, because a lot of people will give up, and endurance is a skill that not a lot of people have. But I think it is this one quality that people assume you're born with. Oh, they're used to it. They've worked through all these things, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we worked through a lot of problems, and that's how we build up endurance. Like marathon runners don't just go off and run a marathon. Like if you asked me to run one today, I could maybe walk one, but I don't think I could certainly run it. Like it would take time and practice, and, running 10 miles and getting exhausted, running 12 miles and being exhausted. Like you got to build up your endurance. And when you're cutting your teeth and it's getting really hard, like that's where you're growing those muscles. And so push through, keep going.
Where can people find you, Danielle, if they want to learn more about the honey truck or get some of your amazing honey?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Honey Truck Co. And you can find jars of honey at honeytruck.com. And yeah, we're pretty much all over. And if you're listening to this and you don't live in St. Augustine, you can go into a local Home Goods and grab a jar there. And yeah, we're excited to be growing and to be able to hopefully partner with more national companies to get our honey in other people's hands.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Danielle, for sharing your journey with us. So many amazing tips and strategies and just inspiration for people out there. Lots of lessons that can be applied across any kind of business. So I really appreciate you spending the time to talk to me and share your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And we definitely need to get together at a local kookaburra and get some coffee and chat some more.
Absolutely. Tea with honey. Let's do tea with honey.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. They have a
I love
great
that.
green tea there.
Love it. Thank you guys for being with us today. And I hope to see you again next week on another episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Accidental CEO podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the world where creativity and business strategy collide. I am Nada Salvatore, thrilled to have shared this time with you. Remember, every episode is a step closer to mastering the art of being an accidental CEO. So don't miss out. Hit subscribe, drop us a sweet review, and spread the word to your creative tribe. Your next big breakthrough could be just one episode away. Join us next time for more insights, laughs, and actionable tips. Keep pushing boundaries, dreaming big, and embracing the beautiful chaos of entrepreneurship. Here's to make magic happen in your business and beyond.